This is the EZCAP GameDock Extreme 2.1, and just so that you see what it says on the side, it has 8K 60 pass-through and or 4K 144 frames per second pass-through with 4K 60 recording or 4K 60 streaming. So you can input 8K 60 to this device, and you can also stream at up to 4K 60 or higher frame rates if you're willing to lower the resolution to 2K, for example. And here you have the more detailed spec. So the model number is EZCAP 364, and it has a USB 3.2 Gen 1 Type-C interface with audio input and output pass-through through HDMI, and it states the supported resolution, the audio and audio input, audio output, max HDR pass-through resolution, max VRR pass-through resolution. So 4K at 144 frames per second for pass-through is the max HDR, and max VRR pass-through is 4K with a rate between 48 and up to 120 Hz. And it's the same if you're using 1080p, so it doesn't make a difference in terms of the frame rates, whether you're doing 4K or 1080p, still between 48 and 120 Hz. And then the max recording resolution or streaming resolution is 4K 60. It has the different video formats, and its dimensions are 12.8 centimeters by 9.2 centimeters by 2.8 centimeters, and it weighs 228 grams. And I think this is important in terms of your system requirements for this. So it requires at least Windows 10 with a 64-bit processor or Windows 11, USB 3.2, and Intel Core i5-6 or above, and NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1060 or above. And when it comes to laptop, it requires an Intel Core i7-770 HQ or above, and NVIDIA GTX 1050 Ti or above, and 8 gig of RAM. So it's not too demanding on the computer, but it can't be a really old computer if you're using this, since you will use it with 4K 60 or even more. So just gonna pull the top off, and this is the device itself. And I think there might be, let me see if there's a, okay, so you have the USB cable and some manual and these leaflets. So one thing to look in the manual, which is always interesting, is to see what power requirements it has. So all of the devices these days work with USB-C, but it's still interesting to know whether it has any specific power requirements, because it says DC in charge power delivery 3 protocol device. So pretty much any USB charger with power delivery 3 protocol will work. And there's some details about the different status indicator of the LED. So power on red flashing, software detected device but no HDMI input, blue flashing, HDMI input, colorful, slow flashing, device running. I can't see anything concrete about the required voltage or current, but it works with power delivery. And that's the exact model number, EZCAP 364 version M364231220. Okay, so this is just a USB cable, and this is the device itself. So on the front you have the LED, which flashes in different colors as I mentioned, and on the bottom you have some vents, and here you have the different ports. So that's the DC in for powering the device, that's the USB-C for connecting and outputting the video to your computer, and that's the HDMI in and HDMI out, and headset and line in. So what I want to try to do is connect the camera to this and take the output from the camera into this device, and then output the 4K 60 to the PC, and then be able to stream that or record that. I think a lot of people will connect this to a game console, and that's why the high frame rates and the high resolution is also important. So those are the two main uses for this, either connected to a console which supports high resolution and high bitrate, or connected to a camera which supports high resolutions and high bit rates. I think the main difference between this device and a lot of other devices on the market, including devices that are from EZCAP itself, so the same brand, is the 4K 60 resolution that you can record or stream. And you can also input 8K 60 and loop at 8K 60 as well. So that's not very common among these devices. Okay, so all I will do is connect the camera to here and power this up and connect it to the PC, and then I'll continue from the PC. Okay, so one thing I want to emphasize when using this is that you definitely need to have a HDMI cable that supports 8K 60 or whatever you're outputting from your device into this device. So the cable I'm using here does support 8K 60. So that's the one that I will connect to my camera, although my camera is only outputting 4K 60. I'm going to use the Panasonic Lumix GH6. So for the HDMI connection, I will use 4K 60, as you can see here. So you can see the output resolution playback there. Okay, so I'm connecting it to the camera. So that's connected. This is the USB-C cable which has the power. So I'm going to plug it into the DC in port here. So the last port on the device. And this is the USB-C which will go into the computer. So I'll plug this in. And currently there's no LEDs. Oh, okay. Yeah, I just had to turn on the camera. I had it switched off. So there, I turned on the camera, HDMI is coming to the box, and the computer is on and connected to it via USB-C, and it's recognizing the stream, and hence you have the colorful output here. So if you go to the EZCAP website, you can scroll down on the page for the GameDock Extreme 2.1, and on the bottom of the page you'll find the firmware download as well as the software download. So the software is the one that you install on your computer for recording or streaming the output from the EZCAP 364, and the firmware is for the actual device itself. So if you want to upgrade the firmware, you don't have an option to install a driver, but once I connected the EZCAP 364 to my computer, it automatically detected and installed the driver itself, so I didn't have to do anything on Windows machine. So I have already downloaded the 4 files which were available here, including the firmware, the software, and the 2 manual documents. So I will extract them because they come as zip files, and then I will install them. And I might not upgrade the firmware, but I will install the EZCAP Link software, because this is the software you can use to record or stream the video. You can also use OBS, and I'll go into that later, but just for demonstrating this, I think it's easier to use the EZCAP software itself. So the EZCAP Link software is here, and I'm going to right click on it and extract to EZCAP Link. And once I extracted that, I'm just going to click on this exe file to install it. And I will just use whatever default setting it suggests. So that's the path to where it will be installed and the folder. And so saying that it's going to create a shortcut desktop icon, and that's fine. I'm going to click next and then install for all the files to be copied across to those folders. So it's finished installing. So it already has a checkbox which says launch EZCAP Link. So I'm going to click on that to finish. And this is the software. So I don't want to register it because I only have one code. So I want to install it on a different machine. So I'm going to press cancel here, and it will let me use the demo version of this application. So there's 2 portions to this. One is the record and the other one is live. So if you want to stream, you go to this section, and if you want to record, you go to this section. And there you have the capture devices. So in theory, you would have more items if you have different EZCAP capture devices. And that's to select the audio capture device. So here you have auto, headset. So this is the headset which I've plugged into my PC, not the headset that would potentially be plugged into the EZCAP. So I'm going to select HDMI because I want the output from the HDMI of the camera to come into this. And you can even set a schedule, which is interesting. And if I press record, it should start recording. But before I do that, I want to kind of go through the settings here. So here you have setup. So it gives you some options. Hide the status bar when hiding the right bar. Full screen when starting the program. Mute when files management window is displayed. Preview, video render, auto selection. Audio render. Okay, so I mean, these are the speakers that I've connected to my computer. So I'm just going to select default sound render. Keep video aspect ratio. Do not search virtual camera. Record to the same device. Same to device. Bitrate 10 megabits per second. That's actually quite low for recording. So you might want to change this, but you have to be sure that your computer can handle it. So if you have a fast computer, that's fine. And the speed is not just the speed of your computer itself, but also the speed of the disk that you're writing to it, whether it's an SSD or a USB stick that you've plugged in or whatever it is. You need to make sure that it can handle the speed. And the format, you have variable FPS, constant FPS, and you have the audio codec to use with it, and all of them are H.264. So the advantage of H.264 is that it's easy to encode, so it doesn't put any pressure on the computer, whereas H.265 or AV1 would require more processing power. So again, video codec H.264 here. So you might have different things here, and if you have a GPU encoder, you can test that and select different option. Codec speed, ultra fast. So again, this will use less processing power. And it says where it wants to be saved to. And it's saving as an MP4 file, which you already selected there. And whether you want to split the file. So the reason you would want to split the file is if you want it for security. If the recording or your computer crashes halfway through or the recording fails for some reason, you have a section of the video which has been recorded and it's only the last split which won't be recoverable. So here you can select whether you want to split it and how big the split should be. I don't really want to split because it just creates more hassle and I'm confident that my computer or the device is not going to crash. Those are the shortcut keys for record button and the pause button. So this is to take screenshots during recording. So if you're recording or streaming, then you can take a screenshot while that is happening, and you can choose the image format and the shortcut button on the keyboard and the resolution that you want. And on the live tab, you can select the resolution, and for the frame rate, and then you have the bit rate. For 1080p at 30 frames per second, ideally you want more than 3 megabits per second, so 3 to 4 megabits per second as a minimum. And if you can do more, then that's even better. And here you can manage the RTMP server. So you can set the server name and everything. So let me just put one thing. So YouTube at Rad Cameraman, and then the RTMP address. So if we go to YouTube, I've already configured this. So this is the URL. So I'm going to copy this and then come here and paste it. So that's the RTMP address. And the stream key will be this. So you can see it here. I'm going to copy this and paste it. And I think that should be enough. So if I add this, I don't know what enabled and disabled refers to here, but I'm going to add it. So I'll have it there. And then close this. Okay, I mean, I'm not going to do LAN streaming, and I'm not familiar with VBS, so I'm going to skip that. And this seems to refer to a virtual camera. I won't be using that neither. So I'm just going to click OK. So this is the video broadcast. which VBS, which we spoke about. And then here you have the GIF capture. So while we were in settings for image, here you had the GIF resolution and GIF frames per second. So you can set these things here. To be honest, maybe you want to set it at a higher rate, I think. And 15 frames per second should be enough. So what you can do is, if you're streaming or recording, then you can press this to capture a GIF simultaneously. And this is to capture an image, but this is for a single image as opposed to a GIF where you can have multiple images, almost like an animation. And the details for that, again, is in the top part here. And then you have the folder of where all the recorded files will go to. And here you see the outputted videos and images or anything like that. I didn't take any screenshots, but if I had, then they would appear here. So the setting icon here, if we click on this, so here we can select the resolution and frame rate that we want to use. So if you want, you can select 4K and 60 frames per second here, and then use that. And then you have HDR as well. And then here you can choose the audio capture device. So I've set it to HDMI coming straight from the device itself, because the camera output is going into the EZCAP 364 and I want the audio from the camera to be captured. So that's why I've selected the HDMI option. So this is referring to the HDMI going into the GameDock Extreme 2.1 as opposed to the HDMI on your computer or anything like that. So if I press record, it will start recording. So I'm just going to record a 2-second clip and then press stop. So if we click here on the live icon, this is for live streaming. And I previously entered the server on that previous screen. So here you can see that YouTube @ cameraman. So if I check this, then it will appear here. And I think that checkbox is what referred to enabled probably. No, maybe not. On the live stream section, there's an icon here. So if you press that, it will hide the video. So if you just want to hide the video temporarily from your live stream, you could do that, and then you can show it again. And you can also lock or unlock the particular scene. And there's also an audio bar. So as I'm talking, that will move up and down. And you can also rename this section here for whatever camera you have. And when you're configuring the live stream server, you can also configure a room URL. And this is essentially any URL which you want to open just by clicking on it. So it doesn't have to be any particular chat room or anything like that. So I've put in the YouTube Studio URL for that particular video. So if I choose that live streaming server, YouTube @ cameraman, which I configured before, and then I click on open live room, then it will open the link that I've inserted there. So this is the link, but it could be any other link to anything. So it doesn't necessarily need to be a link to YouTube or a chat application or anything. It can be a link to anything which you find convenient to use here. Personally, for my use, because I use YouTube, I think this is convenient for me. I click it and it takes me directly to the YouTube Studio, and I can respond to chat messages here or see any detail about that particular stream. So if I start live streaming, we should see the video appear here. And here you can also select the size that you want. I want the full size of the screen, which is 16:9, coming straight out of the camera anyway. And in fact, here we can choose the resolution and frame rate. So I don't even want 60 frames per second, 30 frames per second is enough. And yeah, 1080p is fine. And here you have the different color schemes that you can choose from. So I'm just going to leave it as it is. And there's an option to have transparency as well. So if you have multiple layers, I guess you can input multiple things from different cameras, and then you would add your scenes here. So it's very similar to OBS in that sense. So you can have multiple video capture devices, audio capture devices, movie, images, and text. So if you did want to use this instead of OBS, it seems to be a little bit easier to use than OBS. Everything is quite straightforward, and you can put little clips here as movies and images and text and have it on your live stream. So I think actually recommend this application over OBS to anyone who's beginning and doesn't want to do anything complicated. So if I start the live stream, here it started on the application here. So let's see how long it takes for it to appear on YouTube. So here you can see that on YouTube it says that the connection is good, but the stream hasn't appeared yet. Okay, so there, the stream has appeared now. So it took about 20 seconds from the time I pressed it until it appeared on the screen. And it seems that you can record at the same time, so I can stream and I can also record, and the two are working separately. So I can stop the recording and continue the streaming, and whenever I want, I can also stop the live stream. So this is pretty much it in a nutshell. I think the most prominent feature of this device is that you can input 8K 60 into it and loop at 8K 60, and you can take in a 4K 60 feed via USB to your computer, and then you can use that to live stream or record the footage. When it comes to live streaming, the bigger concern is around your internet bandwidth, so the upload speed and how much you can push. So even though the device supports 4K 60, that doesn't necessarily mean your internet connection will be able to handle that level of bitrate. So you have to be careful about how you set that. So if you want to stream 4K 60, then you would ideally want to have a really high bitrate. So according to YouTube support pages, if you want to stream 4K at 60 frames per second, the minimum bitrate you should use when using the H.265 codec is 10 megabits per second, and the maximum is 40 megabits per second, and the recommended bitrate is 35 megabits per second. So this is with AV1 and H.265. So if you're using H.264, then obviously you would want twice as much as that. So instead of minimum being 10 megabits per second, you want 20 megabits per second. And instead of the maximum being 40 megabits per second, you probably want around 80 megabits per second as the maximum. So on the YouTube support pages, they haven't actually mentioned what bit rates should be provided if you're doing the same live streaming with H.264. So my assumption is that they probably don't even recommend using H.264 because it will take up so much data. But it does support H.264, and you can stream with H.264 to YouTube as well. Anyway, let me know if you have any questions about this device and how to live stream to YouTube with it. In fact, let me close this EZCAP link software. And if we go to the downloaded firmware and extract it here, I don't intend to change the firmware or anything, but I just wanted to show the user interface. So here is the firmware version of the box that I'm using. So here you have the exe, which is the tool for upgrading the firmware, and the .hex file is actually the firmware file which you could use to update the firmware on that box. I've just got my box, so I assume it's running the latest version of the firmware, but we should be able to check it with this .exe. So I'm going to click on it, and it's recognized the device. And you have some options in terms of configuring the microphone, line in, line out, HDMI, and so on. And you also have some control over the LEDs. So if you did want, you can change the configuration of the LED lights to whatever you want. So, I mean, one configuration would be to turn it off altogether if you're not really monitoring the device with the LEDs and it's just a distraction. So it depends on how you want to use the device. And then if you go to the firmware tab, here you can see the device name, the device ID, and here you can see the device version. So 02010601. If you compare this with the file that was here, then you see that's the same version, 2.1.6.1. 2.1.6.1. So that's the same version, so I'm not going to upgrade the firmware. But if you did want to upgrade the firmware, then you would burn the file by selecting it. Here you can select the file you want to burn and then update it. And here you seem to have different options. Get info for HDMI, and that's it. But most of the time you wouldn't need to actually use this software tool at all. It's just if you want to upgrade the firmware, or you have something going wrong with these lines, you want to change the settings for them, or actually control the LEDs in a different way, then you would use this software. But you shouldn't have to do anything on this software otherwise. So going back to the EZCAP Link software, one of the advantages of this software in comparison to OBS is that it actually runs on all the versions of Windows. So you can run it on 32-bit version of Windows, even down to Windows 7. Whereas with OBS, I think there's way too many restrictions on the quality of the computer that you need to have in order to be able to use it. So that's one advantage of using this software over OBS. And aside from that, it's also a lot easier to use this software in comparison to OBS. So with OBS, there's a little bit of a learning curve before you get to use it effectively. Anyway, let me know if you have any questions about this device and how to live stream to YouTube with it.